Hello everyone. Hi. Welcome to Social Encounter. I'm Giffyglyph. And there's a massive echo. Let me just disable all of that. Hi, I'm Giffyglyph, and today we're going to be doing some D&D stuff, I guess. I'm going to be finishing off a few character builds in the background, I guess, and answering any questions that you might have about my work, or Darker Dungeons, or D&D in general, or just any of that kind of stuff, really. So if you do have any questions, throw them up in chat, and I'll try and answer to the best of my limited abilities. Cool. Also, let me know if the sound is wrong at all, or it's too loud, or it's too quiet. I'm very bad at kind of catching that kind of stuff, so do feel free to let me know. So last week we rolled up Roderick Greenleaf, a human acolyte druid. The most boring combination I think that a dice could possibly create. And we created Tabitha Temple, a little tiefling bard. I think there's some potential there. I quite like her already. But then I'm a big fan of tieflings, so I'm kind of biased. So let's just open up Darker Dungeons and start rolling up a couple of other characters. Where are we? Okay, Darker Dungeons. So, character creation. Cool, we need a random dice roller. Roll one virtual dice. Nope, not d6s. Perfect. Cool. Okay, so new character. What have we got? So 71. That's a good start. Okay. Who have we got? Okay, so another human. See, that's kind of good. When I created the random sort of assignments for the Darker Dungeons character generator, I tried to make sure that humans come up far more often than other sort of monstrous races, because humans are actually one of the least, I think, picked races, apart from those who want to go sort of variant human for that sort of bonus feat. So I kind of wanted to just sort of highlight the fact that the one perk that humans have is that we kind of breed like rabbits and we're everywhere, right? You know, they should be a lot more common than any of the other races. So we have a human. Human 69, a human sage. who then became a paladin. Cool. So now we roll some stats. This is kind of where it gets fun. So we want 3 dice. Strength. Okay, right. So you for strength. Dex and con is charisma. 2, 6, 7. 5, 8, 9. 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm awful at math, by the way. Ooh, okay, alright. Finally, one decent number. 8, 10. Okay, so tricky stats. This for strength is going to be a big problem. Okay, so we'll re-roll that. Much better. Okay, 9. That's another 15. Beautiful. What's the primary stat for paladins? Is it charisma? Let's have a check in the old book. I think it's charisma con, right? Druids, paladins. What's its strength? It's been a long time since I played a paladin, and my current paladin is a kobold, actually. So the worst strength possible. Strength and charisma. Okay, we'll do a sort of fairly typical build. Ooh, bad con though. No, I think that's fine. Okay, we'll do a swap of the wisdom with charisma. Uh, 10, 15. Perfect. And then we add the +1 modifier for being human. Okay, 16, 8, 10, 11, and 16. Not the worst stats I've ever seen on a character. I think Tabitha actually... No, okay, alright, yeah, no, that's good. They're all kind of doing fairly well, I'd say. Except for Roderick, who's fucking storming it. Druids are super OP. Okay, so what are we looking for next? Okay, human sage paladin. We need a name for this guy, girl, guy. We need a name for this guy. If you have any suggestions, throw it up in chat and I'll pick the one that I like the best. In the meantime, who are we? Okay, 39, young adult. Okay. Young adult, short. I am fat. So this was also something that I tried to, when I was creating the character generator for Darker Dungeons, I wanted a very quick way for players to get just like the barest kind of hook for their character, right? You know, I think like Xanathar's has a really good guide to like your backstory and like where you came from and all of that stuff, which is great fun. But it's also sometimes really fun to just get simple characteristics for your character that the table can immediately click onto and start kind of relating with. It's like, oh, you know, oh, brilliant, I've got a backstory with like 27 brothers and sisters, right? The players at the table don't really care about that. What they do care about is if you're a very tall, very fat kobold, right? You know, something like that's like very old as well. You know, like there's so many like little stories that just these 1 or 2 word attributes can trigger in your sort of mind. And I wanted to try and get as much as I could out of like a very tiny table here in this sort of little space. You know, all of this really, you don't really need any of these sort of pages. Like, you know, up to here, this is all the core stuff for building a character. Once you're down into here, this is all fluff, right? But it's useful fluff. So 51, average size family. How even is that? And 64. Ooh, adopted. Ooh, feature. What do we have? Okay. 94. Another distinctive accent. Okay. Okay. So Tabitha has an accent. Oh yeah, we went French with that. Okay. So this guy. Okay, we'll come back to this. Okay. So I'm a young adult, so I'm going to get sort of 1 significant memory of conflict. So what would I do with that? I'd probably tie that into either how I became a paladin, or something to do with natural parents. That could be a nice little bit of history. Try to find his parents. Maybe. Okay, we'll come up to that. And what's his motivation? 50. Liberation. Useful. Liberation. Free the self. So what kind of paladin order is that going to be? Paladins are usually like lawful, right? So how can I be a lawful paladin who wants to be free? Oh, I'll have to think of that. Okay, character habits, 50. He likes to sing. wants to acquire something. Excellent. How much coin does he have to play with? D4. Five D4. 8, 10, 17. 170 gold. So we're not starting off with plate armor, basically, which is good. Perfect. Okay. So this is good. This is I like to do this sometimes when I'm trying to get a few ideas for campaigns, right? Or like little stories that I want to run. Well, not run, but sort of discover, right? You know, I create a small adventuring party, and based on who they are, that tells me what the world is, right? I'm very bad at playing in pre-written settings, you know, like Forgotten Realms or Eberron or Dark Sun or any of that stuff. Not that I don't like them. I mean, Eberron especially. I adore Eberron. And Dark Sun as well has some really good bits. Not least just Sorcerer Kings, right? As a name, oh, so good. But as a DM, that kind of bores me quite quickly because it's discovered. And as a world builder, which is like you know why I like to DM, you've told me the ending, right? Or whatever it restricts my sort of ability to play in that space. I find, you know, it doesn't help me generate ideas. You know, I can that's all you need is like a dice, right, to trigger ideas. But I find established places like that for me are way more useful for players than they are for me as a DM. So coming up with little random characters here immediately, that helps me come up with like factions on the fly, right? Or it's like okay, well, who are the gods in this setting? Or okay, well, you know, we've got like a liberating god here in this setting, and you know, there's a conflict here. Maybe it was difficult to become a paladin, you know, etc. Stuff like that. So I do a lot of this in my spare time. Because I like whenever I run games, I like to run very character focused kind of adventures, I guess, right? Stuff that focuses on the player characters, right, as opposed to some big grand evil or sort of sweeping danger, because the player characters are, well, the players are kind of the important element in a D&D game, I find. Without them, yeah, I haven't really got a game to run. So I need to keep them involved in that story. And that's hard to do when the focus is like on a big bad, I find. And I like to drill down and put them in situations where the players have to make difficult choices. You know, what do I take? Who do I save? You know, do we sacrifice all the kids to the evil devil? Because those to me are the interesting stories. Like what choices the players make, as opposed to what is my big demon doing, right? I mean, who cares? Okay, unnamed human will come back to you. Right, let's create one final character basis. Now, who do we have? Okay, let's do 3 roles. 90. Another human. See, that's good. I kind of like that. We've got a very human-centric party with one monstrous, not monstrous, but you know, one different character. 90, 100, and ooh, we get to choose a background here. Chat, I'm gonna let you choose one. If I don't get one in the next 20 seconds, I'll pick one. We had Sage, we've had Acolyte, we've had Tabitha, Noble. So okay, so a lot of mystical ones. Soldier. Okay, I'm gonna go with Soldier. And they are 50. Another Paladin. Okay, alright. Interesting. Now, what stats is this guy gonna have? Sorry, this girl gonna have. Guy, girl, guy, girl. Yep. 5, 6, 9. I am not having much luck with their strength. 6, 12 dex. 10, 13. Con. She's a little bit more resilient. 6, 14. 6, 7, wisdom. 12, 13, charisma. Perfect. Okay. So this is part of the reason why I do enjoy random character generation. You know, we have a character here who has exactly the same class, same race, but stats are totally different. And that is going to impact what we do with this paladin. You know, even if we, for a start, do we reroll the wisdom or the strength? Do we just accept we're going to have shit wisdom? Or now we've already got a strong paladin. Yeah, I'm going to reroll the wisdom for this one. Ooh, 8, 11. So that wasn't a massive boost. Okay, so this is going to be an interesting paladin. Well, let's we'll add the +1 for being human. 13, 14, 15, 12, and 14. So she has not awful stats. So we could swap the int with strength. Yeah, we'll do that. Okay. 15 and 10. Okay, alright, she's come out slightly ahead of our other paladin. That's not too bad. Jesus, some -1 stuff. It doesn't matter. I think we can still do fun stuff with that. Alright, character details. We need 6 of these. While I'm playing around here, obviously, like just character building. If you have any questions you want to know about Darker Dungeons or my workflow or whatever, just feel free to ask them. And I'll see if I can say anything interesting about those things. So this character is young adult. Shame, I was hoping to get a very old character in here at some point. That would be very fun. She is very short. Average weight. Distinctive birthmark. A small family. And raised by natural parents. Perfect. 28, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 12. Cool. So 1 memory. And 1 motivation. Memory achievement. And 52. Another liberating paladin. Interesting. So these two characters are very similar, like the same motivation. Now, is that because do they worship the same god? No, that would be too convenient. Interesting. Maybe they have opposing kind of viewpoints about how to achieve liberation. That might be it. That's how we get the conflict. And I do very much enjoy player conflict. You know you've got a good game when you've got at least, I want to say 3 players arguing discreetly about like who they should be saving or where they should be going or what threat needs to be dealt with. Not least because as a DM you can just kind of sit back for 5 minutes and like plan what's happening next, you know, while they're having a significant discussion. So let's roll 10. Ooh, which has some facial tics. Interesting. Maybe that's where the birthmark is. Birthmark on face. Yeah, maybe we do that. Facial tics. Or is it like a Blackadder thing, maybe? A nickname that everyone keeps calling her and it triggers, you know, darling. Yeah, maybe that's it. Oh, nickname triggering links. And finally, what does she want to achieve? She wants to learn something. Paladin 5d4. Perfect. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Perfect. Cool. Now we need names for these people. What are we going to do? It used to be a really good generator. What was it like? Oh, the list. I had a really good list of names for this kind of thing. Was it like the Kismet's name generator? No, it's not. It's on Sean name generator. Let's do that. Oh, hey Zujo. Did I pronounce that right? Zujo TV? Yeah, well, we'll go with that. Okay, so our human name. Ooh. Reward Mate. Reward. No, reward. Reward, obviously. Ooh, although no, I know what we are going to use. Where did I put it? So, these. So this is the name of one of my very kind Patreon supporters, Adivice Strakia, a name I can't pronounce at all, but it is a perfect D&D character name. Nice, and that gives me a nice little accent, maybe. Some Spanish, maybe, or sort of Portuguese kind of thing. Zojo? Oh, okay, all right, yeah, okay, there I guess it. Oh, thanks. Cool. I'm glad you like it. Yeah, Monster Maker. I'm quite happy with. I really enjoy. I use it all the time. My players get surprised. Like, I mean, I use the monster manual now, but basically for the pictures, and rough idea of kind of what a monster might be expected to do. But I don't use any of the stats at all in there anymore. Like I just rip everything out of the monster maker, because I find combat a lot more balanced that way, really. Like, I've said it a million times before, but for me, it was a huge shame that Wizards moved away from the 4th edition way of kind of building monsters and encounters. It was, as a DM, just so convenient to know that, okay, here you go, just pick this, and this, and like Lego, it will all fit together, and give you a roughly kind of balanced, or at least entertaining, combat that your players hopefully won't just stroll in and kill in like one Divine Smite, right? So I tried to put some of that back into 5th edition, sort of with but basically by stealing all of the monster rolls and making use of them, and sort of expanding it as well with like guides on, like, you know, how to create attacks and you know, overkill attacks and that kind of stuff. A lot of that came from my love for big epic kind of boss combat, and you know, like a lot of video games. You know, Warcraft has like been a big love of mine for many years, and I love that kind of raid design almost. You know, this is a huge power that my monster can do, and if you don't get out of the way, you are fucked. And it's a bit gamey. I know it's a bit away from almost what 5e is sort of trying to do more of, right? Which is be a bit more, not simulation-y, but a bit more worldy, right? A bit more, what's the right word? I use the Monster Maker templates and then apply the Monster Maker abilities for special enemies. Yeah, similar products. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm really quite happy with overkill attacks. I like to. For me as a DM, it's very important that I have lots of little levers to control the drama in a combat. Really, you know, I don't want. For me, a fight isn't just kill the things. It's a way of getting players excited, right? Or to provide some kind of interesting conflict. So having special powers for monsters and having overkill attacks, things like that I can bring out easily and say, oh, brilliant, okay, you thought you were just going to steamroll this, but now this monster is going to do this thing that you weren't expecting, and how is that going to change your attitude to this combat? Having levers like that gives me the flexibility I need to control, to influence the energy in a battle. I think, where did I see it? I saw it on Twitter. Was it Matt Colville said it, maybe? That encounter design doesn't stop when you start running your encounter. You are raw, you know, you should not stop changing your encounter as it is running, you know, as it's live. Because there are always so many little variables to it, you know, like there's no way you as a DM before your fight can accurately predict how the dice are going to affect your players, or any kind of bullshit get out of jail free powers that they may have had just hidden away that you didn't kind of prepare for. How fortunate your monsters are going to be with sort of criticals and that kind of thing, like how much damage you're going to suddenly sort of spike and kick out. So as a DM, you should always kind of be prepared to edit your encounter on the fly, whether that means altering monster stats or adding in events during the combat that change it in a different direction, or moving it towards something that's more like a skill challenge or a social check. And with quick start monsters in the Monster Maker, that was something that I really tried to highlight, like, or to provide that sort of flexibility with monster stats. And the fact that you as a DM don't have to prepare all this stuff before you start running it. You can define it as you go. And that's a very important bit of flexibility to have. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Matt Cobbler's video. Yeah, I think I saw that a long time ago, actually. Sort of, and yeah, I totally agree with him. Like 4E had a lot of problems, like inflated stats and a lot of powers and book creep. Right, you know, like, I mean, there were so many supplements for 4E, it was ridiculous. But what it did have was a great combat engine that made everyone feel pretty useful, and wasn't difficult at all for dungeon masters to run. I think I ran the Scales of War adventure path, or rather, we, as our group, we ran Scales of War, and we kind of alternated who would be the dungeon master for each one. And I ran a sizable chunk of it, and especially sort of like the conclusion of it. Like, we bundled the last, I think, 4 or 5 sort of chapters together, and I just kind of, as a big, and I completely changed it because that's what I always do with these written adventures. But that was great fun for me. Normally I hate epic kind of tier stuff. You know, I like to stick to levels 1 to 10 and like, because that's where the most character action comes in. But 4th edition had great combat, and it was really good fun to run bosses in, and so that's why I stole all of it and tried to put as much into 5th as I possibly could. It's a big shame to me that I can't... I tried briefly to find ways to get more sort of player push and pull abilities, because I'm a very sort of miniature and grid based DM. You know, everything I run, I don't really do theatre of the mind, so I wanted more ways for players, especially melee characters, who I think in 5th edition don't have as much fun as wizards, really, I want to say. I wanted to give them more opportunities to impact positioning on the table, but I couldn't really find a neat way to make that work with 5E's like totally different attitude to attack rolls and stuff. You know, it's very difficult to get like flanking and all of that stuff working neatly, given how easy it is to, like, without completely like redesigning disengage and moving and re-implementing shift, and at that point you're just kind of making a brand new game, which I've thought about, but that requires a lot of time and attention. But yeah, sorry, like massively long-winded rant. I'm glad you're enjoying Monster Maker. So yeah, thank you. Is there like one combat that you remember having particular fun with? Or like one that where you found it really did help you, having that kind of flexibility? That stuff would be, I'm always very interested to hear about other people's experience with that kind of DM style. Okay. Now we need a female name for this paladin. Yeah, see, I don't really want murder because that is shit in French, I believe, right? Sybil Ford. It's got a bit of a run to it. That's it. Sybil Ford. Done. Oh, perfect. Yeah, no, that's great. Ran a one-shot, group of 6 orcs. Great Axe Cleaves. Yeah, fantastic. I find that is sort of one of the very useful benefits of it, is that it helps you, or sorry, the Monster Maker allows you to add a tiny bit of a distinction to large mobs of enemies, right? You know, you can easily run, okay, it's not just 6 orcs now, it is like 2 striking orcs protected by 2 defendery orcs, with 2 sniping orcs sort of firing stuff from the background, right? Or you know, 2 supporting orcs who are like trying to provide cover for these sort of orc assassins, right? These sort of daggers who are like just kind of try and leap out from the dark and strike for huge damage. And that was definitely sort of one thing that I really wanted to sort of help DMs do. Just add more variety to a smaller sort of set of stat lines. Modric, Tabitha, Vice, and Sybil. Yeah, there we go. I think that's a party. 2 paladins, a bard, and a druid. Yeah, I think that's a good mix. And just like no wizard, which is great because wizards annoy the hell out of me. So many like spells. Okay, so let's start converting some of these to a little character sheet, I think, for possible use or sort of reference for later on. Then that way you can start. So here's one that I prepared earlier, or started to prepare earlier. This is using the Darker Dungeons character sheet that I edited so that it's form fillable. You know, you can just add stuff in here and whatever. And it features all of these sort of Darker Dungeons additional rules on this sort of extra page here, right? So you have like, you know, stress trackers and afflictions and conditions and all of that jazz. It's also got a few extra pages, like dedicated pages for equipment or a more fleshed out sort of spell book, a calendar as well. I find those really useful to kind of keep just keep tracking what's happening in an adventure, especially because I'm awful at taking notes. And like a journey tracker at the very end as well. I think these I'm working on making these sort of last 5 pages, I think, form fillable. At the moment I'm up to this sort of equipment page here, but it just takes a long time to create fields for each of these lines here, and there's a lot of them. That I'm currently working on. But so hopefully I might get some time to do that after I push out the next release for the Monster Maker web app, which I believe is nearly ready. Actually, in fairness, I could probably bring that up. So let's, now that I think about it, I'll just do a quick demo and just sort of highlight, I guess, some of the new features for the Monster Maker web app that will be coming out shortly. Monster Maker. Okay. Ooh, sorry, question. Okay. Monster Maker will have the ability to add a spell list. Oh, what you mean, like spell list in the form of? Let me grab the monster book. Is that not something that could be covered here with, like, you know, spell, first level, yada yada yada? Oh, I see. What you're sort of thinking. Yeah, okay, I see. That is probably possible. But I need to have some. I need to think a bit about that, because I never use the player spells when I'm creating monsters, mostly because I'm not, that for me is like too boring, right? I'm not interested in reading the rules for how Burning Hands work and then building a monster that can use that, but only in this specific, you know, etc, etc. So anytime I use a spell effect, it's always using the sort of base attack and spell DC and damage sort of stat lines on Monster Maker. But I will have a think about how monster levels might translate to sort of like spell tiers for sort of like that 5e conversion or sort of flexibility. Yeah, it's an interesting sort of point. How would I do that? Probably base it on challenge rating, actually. It all sort of smokes out about here, doesn't it? So how does this? Yeah, I think, yeah, using challenge rating as a base is probably going to work as a starting point. I'll have a think about it and see what I can do. It's probably not going to happen for a while in the immediate future. I've got a few plates spinning. Sort of like after I finish this Monster Maker update, I need to just do a quick update for the character sheet, and then I have some features that I really need to do the next release for Darker Dungeons, because I'm aware that's been on the back burner for a long time. So I'll just run through some of the new features for the Monster Maker that are coming up soon, and like I say, hopefully this will be sort of released, I want to say tomorrow maybe, assuming I don't discover any more terrible bugs. So if we compare this to live, actually, so let's just do straightforward resets here. Actually, leave this on the left. So on the left we have the new one, on the right we have the old one. That's barely covered by my head here, but fuck it. So for those of you who aren't familiar with this, this is a tool I wrote to help you sort of build monsters and sort of save them for later use, and all that junk really. So it has support for the sort of quick start monsters that you can build using my Monster Maker, which uses sort of monster levels and things like that to just quickly give you some baseline stats to run monsters with. Alternatively, you can just create a monster sort of using the same 5e raw rule set, right? So, you know, you can just type in all your stuff here, and then you can save this monster to your own little vault here, and then then you can also export it in a variety of different formats, or sort of save it to a JSON file to run and or to share with other players, other DMs, or to save for later use. So I'll just do a reset here. So one of the new features is when you are creating solo monsters, one thing I like to do with monsters is have them be phased, right? So again, it's a bit video gamey, but it helps keep long combat engaging for me. You know, when they hit like a third or 2/3 hit points, they sort of unleash some kind of environmental change and transform in a very like Dragon Ball Z kind of Frieza transformation kind of thing, right? Previously, you would have to manually create or know to create a link between your separate stat blocks for your monster, your solo monster here on the right. Now you can specify how many phases this monster has. So let's say I want to create a 3-phase monster. It will automatically annotate the name of your monster and update the hit points accordingly, and divide them sort of by the number of phases that there are. So you don't have to do a calculation for this or this. It happens automatically. It also adds in a note down here automatically about what trait this solo monster has. You know, when it's reduced to 0, then it transforms, or does something to indicate that it's moving into a new arena of combat. That does not show when you're on the final phase. You notice here on the right there is no such indication on this older version, or this on the live version, I should say. So that's one of the things to, one of the changes that will be upcoming. I have also updated the way that it was generating images. So previously it was, when you were exporting some of these images, the fonts could be a bit misaligned, or it just look very odd, like it wasn't rendering them correctly. So let's see if we can get an example here. Let's condense you even more. So it's a bit hard to tell here, but you can see that, say, like this font here, like, I mean, this isn't rendering correctly, right? You know, the spacing between the letters is wrong. And it's the same, like here you can see it's inconsistent, here it's inconsistent. And that was very annoying for me, especially like to see other people sort of create monsters and then export them badly. You know, that was, I did not enjoy seeing that. So now the rendering is a lot more consistent, text exports correctly, and you should, your monster should be exported beautifully, or, you know, as you would expect anyway. So that's also coming out. Now the main change I want to say is, so let's just reset this. Also, so one of the other export functions that I've added is you can now preview your monster in, or you can see what the GM binder code for this monster would be. So you could just easily copy and paste it into your GM binder kind of home brewery document without having to sort of manually type all this stuff, which hopefully will save some of you a bit of time. Now, what I've also done is added short codes that automatically insert numbers into your monster profile. So for instance, I want on a hit, deal damage, slapping damage. So you can see here, this shortcode here is inserting automatically the expected damage for this monster. What this allows us to do now is to write a trait down here, or an action or an attack, or anywhere you can write text basically. And now, if I update the monster, let's say I want to update it to level 10. It's a level 10 monster. This is automatically updated to match your new monster. And that saves you having to kind of rewrite stats. You can copy this monster, like, and just make one tiny sort of level change, or if you want to change the role but keep exactly the same stats, exactly the same sort of traits and whatever, you know, it's a defender, but this is updated automatically. As part of that, you can also I've added a whole host of these, so you can basically insert any number that makes sense. You know, your strength, your attack, etc. So you can see 7 strength, 20. It's putting in my strength attribute, etc. Now we can also add modifiers to these things. So let's say I want to deal twice the normal damage here. Now this is updated. let's say I'm doing an area attack and I want to do half damage on a miss. Put in the right modifier, it updates it accordingly. Now, what we have also added is random numbers. So, I want to deal, let's say I want to deal, on average, I want to deal 20 damage with this attack. And I want to roll this randomly. This will now show you the randomized dice roll you need to get this number on average. I know that's been a request, that's been a feature that a few people have requested now, so I'm kind of finally glad to get around to doing that. Now, we can also use the dice here. Let's say I want to deal this damage with d8s. Again, it will automatically add the random dice roll you need to get this number. As before, it will automatically update to it won't show anything if there is no like d8 dice roll you can do to kind of average to 4. But you can see it updates accordingly on averages. So hopefully that will be a huge amount of time saving and sort of streamlining for everyone. Oh yeah, thanks. Yeah, yeah, those keening issues were just killing me to see. So I'm glad to finally have been able to sit down and get those sorted out. So those, I think, are going to be some of those are the main features of this upcoming update to Monster Maker. Hopefully the automatic damage shortcodes, the shortcodes and the randomized numbers will help a lot of you out in the future. Oh, Markdown, of course, yes. What I've also done is, for clarity, is add a sort of example help dialogue to show you what happens. So these are sort of all of the shortcodes that you can insert into your help sort of blocks. This shows you how to apply the multipliers, and this shows you how to apply randomized damage. We can also, one thing that does exist in the live version, but I think a lot of people miss because I haven't highlighted it at all, is you can use Markdown to highlight or to bold or italic text. So here you go. So you know, this is now in italic, this is bold, etc., etc. So hopefully this next update will help some of you out in the near future. Then once this is done and I've spent some hours updating the character sheet, I'm hoping to finally get to sit down and update Darker Dungeons with a few new chapters and a few expansions or sort of revisions of stress and dangerous magic. I want to add just a few sort of variants around those systems to enable or to help out other forms of sort of using those mechanics. But I think the main thing that I really want to figure out is using light in D&D, because using light at the moment is awful, and it anytime I try and run a dungeon crawl, it's very frustrating and tedious. You know, you can see, you saw there is a brief snippet of how frustrating I find, like the light spell, for instance, by the changes I put in version 2.1 of Darker Dungeons. But yeah, I have a few mechanics around light that I'm testing at the moment that will hopefully make it a bit more significant, and without having to calculate distances, because that's not fun for anyone. Cool, okay, so that was Monster Maker. Sorry, is there anything else anyone would like to see or explore at the moment? Obviously let me know, and I'll sort of get around to it. So here's Giffyglyph. Okay, well, let's... would it be possible to have the stat block export with transparent background? I think that might be possible. Yeah, I think so. That would... let me have a think. Actually, I'll tell you what, we'll... Actually, why don't we test this on stream? So you can have some fun and watch me code. This is going to be great viewing. Streamer of the year. So let me just spin up some of this, and we'll just see if this is going to work. Now, I think it is, but I need to see. Okay, right. So, need you at the moment, or you, or you. Oh, I've gone very dark. Hang on 2 seconds, let me put a light on. Okay. Right. So where were we? So this is done in exporters, or is it files? Oh, it's in the monster panel. So monster preview. See, the problem with having a lot of code is I forget where everything is all the time. Okay, so this is our sort of code for doing the export. At the moment, so when it's transparent, I see, okay, yeah, so what I have done on this is So the monster preview automatically applies a background color. We can see here in the, not here in the monster contents. Monster contents body. There it is. Okay, so at the moment this background is set to white or whatever we want it to be. We just etc. So now why are you setting to? Got it. Okay. I think I know what this is doing. Monster body. So welcome to the exciting life that is me. This is how I spend a lot of my evenings now, just figuring this stuff out and scratching my head and wondering why nothing is working at all the way it should be. Contents body, perfect. If we just change you to red, for instance. We'll wait for the SAS to update, which it has. Perfect. Now we export you. Now we can see that you're exported as red. Beautiful. Now we change you. Okay, right. Perfect. Okay, so that's got a transparent background at the moment. We'll export you. What do you? Ah, okay, you still come out as white. Okay, right. So, what do we do? HTML. So this is using the HTML to Canvas plugin. I think excellent background color. If we set it to null, exporters. Let's preview. So if I'm right, this will do the thing. Boom. Okay, there we go. Transparent image. So I think that's going to be relatively easy to do. What I'll do probably is, I would say for this release, I'm probably not going to have time to customize colors or any of that jazz. But what I will do is see about adding, I'll add in a transparent theme that will be, that will have, you know, this sort of just clear sort of appearance and allow you to export stuff without a white background. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's wonderful. Like once it's exporting as a transparent, you can easily like adjust hues and all that stuff without it being a problem. So I'll throw in a new theme. As a large part of why I created themes in the first place was kind of being able to add in this sort of custom request, really. So this is a good use of that. So thanks for the suggestions. I'm awful with names. Just Zojo. Okay, there we go. Perfect. Yeah, that's fine. I like that kind of request because it's super tiny and easy to deal with. So more of those, please. Thank you. Oh, Zoju. Right. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, unfortunately, I am notorious for just screwing up names of any kind all the time. I still call. We have a running gag in one of my campaigns where I keep calling one of my players by the other player's name. And I don't know why it happens, but it happens about 5 times every game. And it's very, very frustrating that I've reached that age where I can't do names anymore, apparently. Cool. Okay, so background color, yeah, that'll work. That's where do I have the themes? I'm not gonna remember all this stuff. Oh god. No, not new, not new. Nope, your Dark Dungeon stuff. Perfect. Blueprint form. Okay. Gonna be in the advanced dialogue. Okay, yeah, that should work easily. Let's start with that. Can you look at the themes? Right, dot theme. Okay, there it is. Perfect. Has the box shadow. New body. Cool. That works. Oh, okay, right. So, yeah, there it is. Transparent. Excellent. If I update the template, you should crop up normally. Transparent. Oh, okay. All right. Maybe not. Almost. Close. So that's there. Not persisting. That's interesting. Why are you not persisting? because it's uppercase, that's why, right. Rebuild the template. And then it should be done. Good, okay. Oh, that's what it's missing. Wait, how did I screw up the diamond one? There's always a catch. Oh, it's because I changed it up here, wasn't it? Yeah, there it is. What were you, white? Yes. IV, transparent. You export, fine. Diamond exports fine. And if I'm lucky, IV exports fine. Perfect. Okay. Excellent. So yeah, we'll have the transparent theme added in as part of this release. Thanks for the suggestion. That was a really good idea. Yeah. Okay. Cool. No worries. It's part of it's why I enjoy releasing this stuff out there. You know, I'm only one guy, so it's good to get a lot of input and ideas from people who actually use this stuff. That isn't just me. I tend to be well, actually no, still today. I'm very much a perfectionist, so this has been a very useful way to try and train myself out of some of those protective habits of keeping hold of a bit of work forever until it's perfect. So yeah, thank you. If you have any suggestions or ideas or criticisms, I'm assuming no criticisms because my work is obviously perfect in every way, but on the rare occasion that it's not, you know, do let me know, and I'll see what I can do about that. I'm kind of glad with how quick that worked, actually. That was quite useful. Good. Yeah. So I think one day, eventually, I would probably like to release this, or sort of open source this code anyway. I think I might make that a sort of long-term sort of stretch goal on the Patreon, because it's probably not too healthy for it to just kind of sit waiting for me to find time to update it or add like new export options or any of that jazz. Like, there's a lot I would like to do with this in future. You know, at the moment it's just got a vault, but it would be nice if you know, I want to be able to let people add their own traits or edit this sort of pre-made list So trait selection needs to be something that I can needs to be something that I add in the future, as well as encounters. Right, I don't necessarily want to. I don't want to do something as complicated or as well, thought out as improved initiative. But I think there does need to be a way for you to just quickly group monsters into little encounters, so that you don't necessarily have to. You don't have to go to improved initiative if you're just running a very quick fight, or you just need a long list of stat blocks to look at. I find it very annoying that I have to keep opening these up anytime I want to reference a monster. The sort of export options kind of help that. You can just export it as a PNG and sort of flick through things on your phone and whatever, but it would still be nice to, I think, group stuff together as into encounters. But I think that's a long-term plan. Before I do that, I think I do need to finish Darker Dungeons, or at least finish the next phase of Darker Dungeons, and then I really do need to start working on Artifactory, my sort of magic item supplement that I've had on the burner for, well, on also the Book of Business, which I've had on the burner for a long while. So Artifactory, rune words have sort of been sat here for a while, kind of unfinished. Socketing items, that's pretty much there. I think socketed items. Yeah, that was sort of released as part of the gemstones. Yeah. So I think this, I might need to revise some of this, but I think this is pretty much there. So Artifactory is, as opposed to a book of magic items, because those already exist, and I don't really think I would add anything useful to that. What I intend Artifactory to be is a bit like Darker Dungeons, a series of sort of modular ways that you can add item crafting into your game. A lot of ideas, again, sort of taken from my years and years of playing Diablo and Warcraft and similar kind of games. Like socketed gems and set items and arcane dust and all of this kind of stuff that let you, or that you can just give to players so that they can customize their gear in their own sort of way. Something else that I really want to add in as well are sort of caster guns, because I saw Outlaw Star when I was a kid, and they were the coolest thing in the world. For a while I was wondering, and I'm still kind of on the fence about, like, is a guncaster a class or a subclass of fighter, maybe? Or a subclass of artificer, depending on sort of what that ends up turning out as. But I don't know if I'm going to get into class design. It might just be that a caster gun is a sort of ranged weapon with sort of modular, or like little spell shells that you can kind of slot into that let you fire off sort of spells of certain levels. I think there's some potential in there, especially for sort of particular types of campaign. Especially because caster guns are just so cool. But Yeah, so like set items are also a thing that I would like to introduce, as well as, what was the other thing? Oh, just sort of guidance and advice on like how to create sort of charged items. I've been introducing them as part of my campaign, but let me see, where did I put the image? Oh my god, 8 months ago. Okay, so here is one that I put out a while ago. And this is something that I really like. This kind of magic item I'm a huge fan of. Like I absolutely adore, because it gives players choices to make during the game, and that's my favorite kind of thing. Rather than an item that just does one thing and it always does that thing, this is an item that players get to argue about using with each other. You know, oh, I only want to use the one charge. Well, why don't you use 2 charges and then you can get us both? Well, but then if I do it with 2 charges, I haven't got enough to do the thing later, and then that's another 5 minutes of the game burned, where I can just sit back and watch them have a discussion with each other. So, for instance, this is the Ring of Healing Surge that I brought into my campaign, because at that time we didn't have a dedicated healer. So, and I didn't want to take it easy on them, so I gave them a little tool that they could use to get a small healing boost, but without it being sort of life cleric overpowered. So as a magic item, this has 3 charges that you can spend 1 charge to do a small bit of healing to someone, or you can burn extra charges to do little modifiers. Ooh, Ring of the Ram. Is that a raw 5e one? If I Ring of the Ram 5e. You can expand an action. Oh, cool. Yeah, okay, yeah. So, well, that's kind of annoying. I thought I was being a genius here, and actually I was just copying an existing item. I mean, it's slightly different in that you're just kind of enhancing the power you use, right? So for each charge, yeah, okay, yeah, you're just kind of like, it's the same thing, but you're just kind of beefing up the power. But that's kind of okay as well. But yeah, that's a type of magic item that I like, especially adding in little ways for players to maybe explore about enhancing that item and sort of gaining more power. That way you can introduce a magic item very early on, and still have it be relevant in the sort of later levels of the campaign, because players have kind of, you know, they've grown attached to it and they've bulked it up, right, with extra gemstones or a special reforging by a sort of legendary ringsmith, right? You know, that kind of stuff that you can seed in your campaign, or like put in as little quest rewards and that kind of thing. So this is sort of the format of one of the directions that I kind of want to, one of the main chapters that I want to put in Artifactory. I think I did a similar one with Zephyr Ring. Zephyr. I put it. My problem was I wrote these and then I put them somewhere, and now I cannot remember for the life of me. Where? Search. Maybe I didn't. Maybe did I Twitter it? That probably was, wasn't it? Yeah, a long time ago. Oh, perfect. Yeah, nice. Yeah, it's a nice little item that gives players a little bit more resilience, but it doesn't give them a straightforward easy ride, which you know I enjoy that. Yeah, magic missiles can be brutal. I always feel guilty whenever I use them or I give them to my monsters, and then I forget that players don't really have such they don't feel guilty at all whenever they use it against my creatures, so that very quickly vanishes. I've got to start organising my stuff better. I'm sure I put this somewhere. Ah, okay, here we go. Yeah. So this was full screen. Okay, there we go. Okay, so the Zephyr Ring was another one that I added mostly because this was sort of like a part of an experiment to add in a bit more movement into my campaign. So we had some characters who wanted to be a bit control-y or a bit, I think in 4E it was like sort of like the leader class, allowing other characters to kind of move around or attack, you know, in place of themselves. So the Zephyr Ring was part of my attempt to sort of allow other creatures, party members, to do that. You know, you can spend a charge to move someone a certain amount, or to you know, give them sort of like surround them with wind so that enemies have slight disadvantage while you're moving them, that kind of thing. This one doesn't tend to be used very often, I think mostly because the players have forgotten that they have it. Which always tends to be the way. Players don't really remember anything except the +1 magic item, unless it's either +1 magic item or deck of many things, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean this is sort of like tiny little things that little changes you can easily add to slightly alter the dynamic of your adventuring party, but without having to kind of come up with classes and subclasses to adjust it. So the player who first failed all death saving rolls. Oh wow, that sounds brutal. Erase his character sheet, down skills. Oh yeah, relentless. Oh, relentless is such a good skill. Like, that's fantastic. That's brilliant. So yeah, so this is in the long term something that I really want to add to Artifactory. This kind of guidance on like what do you want your magic item to do, and you know, sort of like, is it a controllery magic item, or is it a damagey magic item, or is it a healy magic item, and like ways that that can sort of alter your party dynamic. But yeah, you know, that all just depends a bit on me getting the time to sit down and write it. And hopefully, once I get Monster Maker and Darker Dungeons into a pretty more stable point, I think Monster Maker is pretty much there. I'd like to add a chapter on writing traps and just sort of hazards. You get a very brief example of what that looks like in the chapter, in the example adventure that I put in, right? So the Court of Bones, right? So Court of Bones, I wrote as an example of like how you can use like Monster Maker creatures and stat blocks to run an adventure, but also as a test of my adventure writing kind of skills, because I find adventure writing very difficult. Because I'm an improv DM, so I'm not used to writing stuff out in this kind of detail. But as a part of it, it has a little trap, or sort of a hazard, really, called a necrotic conduit. And this is using similar kind of, or a similar approach to building monsters. You know, it has its values are based off a stat block for its level and its type and so on and so forth. So I need to write a chapter really on how to create these and how to add them sort of into your encounter, and like sort of monster point cost and that kind of thing. But beyond that, and maybe I might expand or sort of revise the Court of Bones, depending on feedback. But I think Monster Maker is probably coming to an end, unless there's something fantastic that I can think of, or that someone else can suggest. Darker Dungeons as well is probably close. I mean, there are any number of kind of things that I could add into it. So light, I think, has to be in there. It would be nice to write something on morale and helpers and sort of loyalty systems. Helpers especially, I think, that kind of thing. And I would really like to add a little economy chapter, because money in 5e is just ridiculous. Like, I've tried to add so many little financial sinks into Darker Dungeons, you know, with living costs and like stress relief and all of this kind of stuff. But you can, if you follow 5e gold and loot paths, then none of that's going to matter, because your characters will be swimming in gold. So I would like to kind of explore that at some point. I don't know how useful that is going to be to sort of people in general. It is somewhat campaign dependent, I guess. But I guess like most of Darker Dungeons, it's like that, right? You know, you kind of pick little bits here and there depending on what your campaign is. So I think those are probably like the three main outstanding parts from that supplement. Unless, well, it would also be good, actually, having said that, to do an example adventure in that supplement as well. So I wrote the Court of Bones here for Monster Maker. One that I had sort of in the back of my head here was something called the Cult of Flesh, which is a sort of vaguely Lovecraftian kind of body horror adventure that I was kind of thinking of doing. But I need to have a think about that. It's almost like for Darker Dungeons, I feel what might be nice is to have like a small seed, almost a bit like kind of the Hamlet in Darkest Dungeon, right? You know, to provide a very small village or town as a starting point that you can then flesh out with sort of adventures around it, and then that sort of hooks nicely into the journey rules and whatever. Actually, yeah, that might be slightly larger, but I feel that probably deserves to be in Darker Dungeons, thinking about it. Or does it though? Because yeah, I do wonder about this, because I think, you know, I spent a fair amount of time sort of writing the Court of Bones and testing the Court of Bones, and sort of, you know, revising it. And yeah, I don't think many people are actually going to run this, like, ever. I mean, it might give some ideas to people, but I'm not sure whether sort of like adventures are what people are looking to my work for. So I need to think about what the long-term value of that kind of stuff is, as opposed to, you know, sort of like writing rules, especially modular rules. Anyone can use those, right? Whereas if you want to run the Court of Bones, you have to have a specific game in mind to do that. So yeah. But yeah, once Monster Maker and Darker Dungeons are done, or, you know, the next phase of those two things are done, I can start to look more into Artifactory and get back into that. Like Book of Business, I started back when my players were running a business, sort of back at the start of my campaign, but we've moved away from that as our campaign has developed, and this has kind of fallen by the wayside for me. I think this has some value. Like, I was reading Blades in the Dark a while ago, which, I mean, that looks fantastic to me, like, and has a great setting as well, like Duskvold, is it, or Dustvol? One of the two. Like, very like such a flavoursome setting, and what I think I might consider sort of like Book of Business was just supposed to be, oh, okay, you want to run a business as a player, you know, that could be kind of interesting, and then you can run like little shopkeeping kind of adventures, right? Or it's almost like there's a video game like where you are a shopkeeper, right? And you have to go out and hunt things to bring back to run or to sell in your shop to pay for the rent. So you have to go out on adventures to kill monsters, to get loot, to sell in your shop, to get money, to pay, you know. And I that to me, I think is an interesting starting point for a campaign. Or, you know, you could run like a 10-session game in that, I think, easily. But Book of Business, I'm wondering if that can be refactored or made a bit more generic into running a guild, for instance. You know, maybe your players are, you're not just an adventuring party. Your player is, or your party is part of a guild, and what they do, or who they hire, or what missions they take, impacts sort of what that guild gets and what those sort of perks get. It would be nice. Like my goal is to have that happen in a fun way, right? I don't really care very much for accounting, because I don't really get very interesting stories out of that. What I do like is sort of theme hospital style, dungeon keeper style construction and management games, right? Because they're fun, and that's what I want this supplement to kind of be. I don't think it's there yet, so it's going to sit on the back burner until it is. But I think the guild approach is going to be interesting. Actually, did I have some notes on that? No, not you. I think I did. A large part of that was going to be on just sort of like a framework as well for kind of running a guild-based adventure, or sort of here you go. Yes, this was kind of when it delved into. It was almost like the structure for running your game. I think this was very heavily influenced by my reading of Blades in the Dark at the time. Like that sort of, here's the cycle for your game, right? For this campaign, you know, you guys are running a guild, so you have to find work to do, and then you have to get to that work site, and then you have to do your job. You know, you have to kill the dragon or rescue the princess, or whatever the sort of, you know, mission is. Then you have to come back, and then you have to do your sort of guild business, right? You know, do you need to hire someone and to sort of expand your influence within your setting? So there might be something in that, but I think that's going to sit on the back burner until I've got more progress with Artifactory. Yeah. Sorry, I realise I'm ranting at this point. So I tend to do that. I'm a waffler. Notes. Yeah. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, so I have multiple notes documents where I just kind of jam ideas down. So vague notes on like revising races, like because they're ridiculous at the moment, but yeah, the Acquisitions Incorporated book, actually, yes. So that that I do need to read, actually. You know, that looks a lot of there looks to be a lot of fun sort of flavor in that. And I need to pick that up and kind of see like where they went with that. They might have actually, I mean, covered kind of all of the fun stuff of adventuring anyway, right? But yeah, there's definitely that's definitely a supplement that I do need to pick up. Is it? Have you read it? Is it good? Actually, having said that, I think that gets us up to 10 o'clock. So I'm gonna have to bring it to a close. Thank you very much for stopping by. I'm just gonna repeat all of that just after I respond to this then. Yeah, exactly. I assumed that would sort of be more of the direction that they went in, you know, sort of a fairly light touching of it with their kind of typical wordplay that they like to do. Yeah, exactly. I mean, in fairness, I guess that's the approach of 5e anyway, right? Isn't it? It's sort of really to drill down on the flavor and stay away from big numbers and any of that kind of just crunch, really. Which is why I tried to put it all back in with Darker Dungeons. But yeah, anyway, so yes, thank you all for watching and stopping by. Hopefully I'll be running another one, I think, next week. Same time, same channel, etc. If you have any questions you would like me to ask or try to answer during stream, let me know beforehand, and I'll see about feeding it in. In the meantime, special thank you, obviously, to all of my Patreon supporters. You know, your support is very much appreciated. You know, I don't think I would have persisted quite this long with, or sort of written as much as I have without sort of this kind of backing. It's been very heartwarming. Special thank you to Adi Weistrager. I'm going to do that every time. Anthony Camplar, Brady, Douglas, JM Sundon, and Seth Cooper. Again, you know, thank you all, and thank you to everyone else as well for all of your support. Thanks for watching. This has been Social Encounter. I've been Giffyglyph, and see you next week. Bye.